So you're going to be doing some street performing up here, and
Yeah,
you're
yeah, in
doing
the busy
a
mall.
show at Vinnie's Dive as well, I believe.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah, doing Vinny's dive bar. With a local grind band called Awful Noise.
no awful noise. They're
Yeah,
great.
yeah, they're fantastic. And we were supposed to play with them with Onanizer. But obviously it was just such bad timing. We When we were doing the Onanizer tour, we were supposed to play two shows in Queensland. We were supposed to play one at Vinnie's Dive Bar and another at a venue in Brisbane.
Yeah,
And the
Alfred.
days leading up, yeah, Alfred.
Yeah.
Alfred came and said no. Alfred. I I really wish they'd just called it Cyclone Alf Stewart. You know, I feel like Australians would have had a bit more reverence for it, if they'd done that,
Yeah, but then all the Queensland Green Day fans would have been really really angry with Alf Stewart because that fucked Green Day. The whole
Yeah.
thing,
Well,
and that
it fucked Onanizer as well.
yeah,
And this it was really nice to when I saw that Green Day had cancelled their shows because of the cyclone, I thought, oh well, that puts us in with the same level as Green Day as far as
pretty
cyclones are
much.
concerned.
Yeah.
The cyclone doesn't care whether you're Green Day or Onanizer, it's so we shared an experience with Green Day, which
Oh,
we know about, but they don't.
what a fucking awful. You know, the best part is I literally just moved out of my army house. I just left the army and I was back filling up sandbags. Like, wow. Just sticking them in the back of my
Oh,
car.
transferable skills. That's really good. That's good. They teach you life skills in the army. It's not,
Oh,
I'm sure
apparently
you're good
so.
at, from what I've seen in cartoons, I assume you're really good at potato peeling now as well.
Can peel a potato, can iron a shirt. Look, you know.
Yeah. And these were things you couldn't do before you joined the ADF.
Oh, God. I wanted to ask, as someone like obviously as we're all getting older and things are getting sore, more sore, and everything for all of us who aren't double jointed anyway. But I wonder, is your freak show act getting harder as you get older?
Um, I don't think it's getting harder. I do pace myself a little bit more. Like I don't go out and grind out 3, 4 shows a day for 5 days a week very often.
Mhm.
I mean, if it wasn't for um, fucking Cheeto Taco Man, I would have gone to the States this year. And
What?
so like
What's Cheeto Taco Man
often,
got to do with you going to the States? Surely that wouldn't have. What? How would that have affected you? I'm informed. Like, yeah.
so so I'm a bit dodgy.
Okay.
Um,
I get it.
no, so like I normally just go into the United States on a tourist visa,
Hmm.
and and I do street shows there, and usually they don't ask me any questions, but quite a lot of people do that for performing or for tattooing or suspension practicing or
Yeah, yeah.
like all kinds of things like
So
that.
it's not a
Second,
performance visa.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, because I'm not working for anyone.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and local cops don't seem to put two and two together or give a shit. And but the problem is the immigration are going to ask a lot more questions than they were.
Yeah.
I've always risked deportation.
Mm-hmm.
But nowadays I risk a lot more. You know,
Yeah, I
like,
hadn't thought of that because it's not
yeah.
just, yeah, interesting. Well, I'll tell you, mate.
And
Talk,
also like it's just shit's fucked there, man. Like I don't want to be there while there's riots. I don't want to be
mm,
there while the National Guard's getting called in to quell said riots. Like it's just not. It's just a bad scene. I mean, it's not Gaza, but it's
you're
it's
very
not
rubber
great.
bulletable. You know,
Yeah, I just got one of those faces. You know, like one of those rubber bulletable faces. You're not the first to say that, actually, Tom. You know, it's a commonly held view.
I love the fact that you and I, you know, knew each other and you knew this, you know, fucking drug fueled madman that I was in my music journalism days. And then, like, 10 years later, I'm in the infantry getting trained to be a riot control, you know, like literally with the shield and the batons and stuff. And I realized, oh my God, if we had had a different turn of events, at one point you and I could have met each other on the other side of a riot shield.
Absolutely. 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 You know, but I mean, I've like I've had similar conversations with a mate of mine who grew up to become a police officer,
Mm.
you know, and like you said to me a little while ago, like the Australian Army is actually kind of woke as fuck a lot of the time. Like when,
Uh,
you know, when like a lot of guys I know who've come out of the army have actually come out less conservative than when they went in, you know, and and it's funny because that's not what you'd expect at all. And like lots of ex-army guys I know in the United States
mhm.
are very disillusioned with conservatism and stuff like that. But it's it's one of these things. Like I've I have a lot more respect for the armed forces than I do the police force.
Mhm.
Um, and it's because their resources are used in more like humanitarian ways often, you know, like it's the
Mhm.
army that come in and clean up after natural disasters, you know, it's seeing the army used as a fighting force breaks my heart. But
Mm.
seeing or used to quell protests breaks my heart. But you know, seeing like but what really ultimately breaks my heart is seeing how much we rely on our defense budget for things that should just be their own thing. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
there should just be like a natural disasters department.
They
You know what I
100%
mean?
need to be paying the
Yeah.
SES, using us as this unpaid resource just because we're there. Oh, sorry, I need to stop saying we,
Yeah.
but using the army just because they're there, fuck
Mm,
off, you know. And it pisses off a
yeah.
lot of people in the rank because they're like, I'm trying to train my boys. Like we've got training objectives we need to meet, and you keep pulling us off every time there's a flood, you know. So
Yeah.
like they're pissed
Yeah.
off because army people want to do army stuff, you know, not have to go to a fucking during COVID. Remember when they fired all the nurses because of the fucking vaccine mandate? So they sent a bunch of grunts into nursing homes. They called it op bedpan.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like it's just using soldiers for miscellaneous labor. You know, it 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 like it's just another example of how we need to be a little bit more creative about what our what form our public services take.
Mm.
You know, and you know that it's. I mean, my views aren't necessarily black and white. I do the main cynicism I feel in terms of the military is the idea that if the army is deployed in a war situation or in a combat situation, then they are automatically on the side of righteousness.
It is
You know?
weird, isn't it? Isn't it
Yeah.
good that the good
Like,
guys have always won the wars? Yeah.
yeah, like that's what I find really frustrating
Mm.
is this idea that you know somehow the failed invasion of Gallipoli was for my benefit. You know, like
Yeah.
somehow young Australians going and getting butchered on a Middle Eastern beach on behalf of the great British Empire, like somehow that's a sacrifice made for me. And I don't see it as a sacrifice. I see it
Mm.
as
A waste.
exploitation.
And a
You know,
waste.
like I
Yeah.
yeah, waste of life. Absolute waste of life.
Yeah.
The the this and then the apologies that are made out of it, like this myth, and it is a myth that they ended up on the wrong beach. Like you can look it up. That's a load of
Mm.
horse shit, man. Like they'd done the maths.
Sounds like
Like,
officers covering their ass to me.
yeah,
Yeah.
and like blaming some guy down the chain rather than someone who went up there. Well, if we if they've got 1,000 men and we've got 1,000 men, if we lose 999 and they lose 1,000, then we've won. Like
Yeah.
that sort of stuff, and the kind of jingoism that is used around things like Remembrance Day and Australia Day, where it's used, and I swear it wasn't like this when I was a kid, but maybe I'm being wishy-washy and nostalgic. But I seem to remember those days having a more of a mourning sort of
Mm,
vibe, like as in that's a tragedy, that was fucked. Why did we do that? Sort of
mm,
vibe. Whereas in recent years, particularly under conservative governments, we sort of use it as a way of justifying our deployment of Australian military personnel in situations like in the Middle East,
mm,
where they just like we just shouldn't be there. Like if you
mm.
look at the history of Western intervention in the Middle East, it
Oh,
has
what do we accomplish?
consistently
Nothing. Yeah.
exacerbated consistently exacerbated the situation. Like nothing good has ever come long term.
No.
Nothing good has ever come from us going and invading the Middle East, and that doesn't mean I fucking support the Taliban or I think Saddam
No.
Hussein's a good bloke or the Ayatollah's a good bloke. Of course not, of course not. But this and at this point now, apart from unless you like we fight wars with remote controls and drones these days.
Yeah.
It's not come on lads over the top. Let's do it for
Yeah.
Islam. It's pretty unfair. Well, it's not. It's
And it's
we've kind of reverted to pre-World War One era where we only fought people whose tech was like significantly worse than our own. Where like prior to World War One, most of the wars that were going on was colonial wars.
mm,
Shit like the Boer War, which is essentially England and Holland arguing over which of them is going to colonize Africa. Like it fascinates me how these are this is used as jingoism, and it means that if I criticize the war, I'm criticizing the troops.
hmm
Like where I mean, I don't have to tell you this. Like, I mean, we talked about it the other day. That like people join the army because they need work,
hmm
or because they need to straighten their life out, or because they need to. It's very few people go, yeah, I want to join the army so I can go and kill foreigners, and
mm,
like and then when things do come out, like Ben Robert Smith,
mm,
which I always just think of the Cure when I hear his name anyway. But like, when things like that come out,
uh,
there's so much patriotism attached to the military that people don't want to believe it.
no, no.
Like people don't want to believe it. Um, and it's described as a witch hunt, and it's this, that, and the other. It's like no, like we need to admit that, and it's not necessarily a reflection on the military itself, although it's not something I want to participate in, and I really don't like the way it's used a lot. It's more just like when we look at systems, we need to remember that systems are made of people,
Mm,
and people are inherently flawed. And and I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but I do know that we shouldn't have been in Afghanistan in the first place,
mm,
and we something's gone very wrong when the things that have come out about Australians conducting war
mm,
crimes have come out. Like there's no way we can dress that up as okay,
mm.
in my opinion. And it's obviously they're not a reflection. Obviously I don't blame you for
Yeah, well, on that, and on that, it's interesting because a lot of people I've known in the army, particularly the ones that are outside of combat corps, inside of combat corps in the infantry, holy fuck, dude, Ben Robert Smith was our hero. This dude was, oh my God, he's an action figure come to life. And for the vast majority, until all this stuff came out, that was how people looked at it. That was used as a motivational thing for me. It's like, you could be the next Ben Robert Smith if you really work hard,
Yeah.
but a lot of people in the army can't stand the bloke. All I ever heard was people talking shit about him. Yeah, apparently he's a fucking bully.
And,
Like everyone.
and that's the most twisted part of it all, is that this was one of Australia's most decorated servicemen.
Mm,
That like he was such a he was a very highly regarded soldier,
mm,
in the same way that Roger Rogerson, the Dodger, one of the most corrupt cops in Australian history, or that we know of, was prior to that one of the most decorated police officers. So it's very hard to have faith in these systems when you go, right, so a police hero turns out to be a murderer and a drug dealer and insanely corrupt,
no.
and a war hero turns out to be a war criminal. Like, how are we supposed to have faith in these institutions? It's
It's annoying too
yeah,
because the
like,
SAS was like the most venerated. Like that was the goal. Everyone that I knew was like, "Holy fuck! If we can get in the
yeah,
SAS." You know, it's
yeah,
sad because
yeah.
yeah. Anyway,
When I was a kid, my dad gave me an SAS explosives manual. I don't know where the fuck he got it, but he gave me that. And he also gave me a copy of War of the Flea, which is guerrilla warfare in theory and practice. Like,
which has really come in handy when you're in a squat in Spain or something.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's there's not a day goes by that I don't draw on each of those sacred tomes of knowledge.
I don't know if you noticed too. Well, you wouldn't have because it's a black shirt, but I'm wearing my Bob Villain running club shirt
Oh, you are.
in
Yeah.
solidarity. I'm really annoyed because
Is
they
that
had
because
this.
you're an anti-Semite, Tom?
Say again? Oh, yeah, hugely. Yeah, hate
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Fucking hell. The Glastonbury thing. Oh my God, dude. Like, people are. It's amazing. It's kind of like there's people who are all of a sudden finding out that Rage Against the Machine are political. Like,
Yeah,
they
yeah,
hired
yeah.
Bob
What do you think I'm
Dylan.
talking about? A fucking printer? Like,
Yeah. What did you think they thought, and what did you think they were going to do if you put them on stage in Glastonbury? Bob Villain don't give a fuck. They never have.
no, and it's amazing. And like Amy from Amal and the Sniffers said recently, like, well, if politicians and the media were talking about it, then musicians wouldn't need to.
Mm, yeah.
Like, that's a really valid point. Something else she said that kind of did irk me a little bit though was she said, "Oh, it doesn't matter whether they're right wing politicians or left wing politicians. None of them care about it." Blah blah blah. I'm like, well, that's just not true. Bernie
Mm.
Sanders has spoken out about Palestine quite a lot,
I think this
and
might be Amy trying to be diplomatic, trying to get the message
yeah,
across without sounding blaming. Just a thought. Go on.
So Jeremy Corbyn, like plenty of like actually left wing politicians, like Bernie Sanders, like AOC, like Jeremy Corbyn, they've all been very vocal about Palestine for a
Mm,
very long time. In fact, it's been detrimental. It's been probably the main thing that's been detrimental to Jeremy Corbyn's political career, actually, because
mm,
he was labelled as an anti-Semite for so long, which I find fascinating because if you call someone anti-Semitic for opposing the actions of Netanyahu and the IDF,
mm.
you're essentially equating Judaism with those human rights abuses.
Isn't it weird? Yeah.
Yeah, which I certainly don't. Any more than like any more than equate, being an Australian citizen with the invasion of Iraq.
Mm.
Like it's any more than I equate being an atheist with Stalinism. It's like it's beyond me how people make these leaps. But well, no, it's not beyond me. I know exactly what it is because it's the simplest, clearest message is usually the one that people hear.
Mm.
So Hamas are terrorists. If you oppose the IDF, you're an anti-Semite and you're with the terrorists, is a really easy, simple, digestible concept for people. You
Mm.
know, whereas like for me, I can think both Hamas and the IDF are cunts, and on a more nuanced level, I can look at how Netanyahu has crushed less extreme versions of Palestinian
Mm.
advocacy groups to the point where the only ones that are still like the only people fighting for Palestinian autonomy are these insane theocratic psychopaths like Hamas.
Mm.
So it's like, and no, I don't think Hamas are freedom fighters. I
Cunts.
think they're fucking nut jobs. I think they're fucking nut jobs. But that situation and that vacuum has been created by the ramping up of Israeli expansion in the last few years. That's so obvious to me.
Mm.
And it's not like Netanyahu speaks for all of the Israelis any more than Scott Morrison or Anthony Albanese, for that matter, speaks for me.
Mm.
That we need to stop looking at people as like these conglomerates.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about, like, there's 8 billion of us, but we all have our own brains, and to think that, and it kind of, yeah, it comes back to that thing, like the ADF doesn't represent me.
Mm.
I've none of, like, there's very few, apart from East Timor maybe, but even like as far as things I agree with the ADF being deployed for, but
Mm.
even the motivations behind East Timor are kind of shitty. It's
It
not,
would
we didn't
take
do
a
that
lot
out of,
for SAMORA Squid to back an invasion anywhere. Yeah,
absolutely,
yeah, it's
absolutely.
fair, and
It
that is
was,
a fair comment.
and honestly, if Denmark invaded Australia, I'd be on Denmark's side. You know, like if Norway wanted, like what would it? Someone asked me what would it take for me to be a monarchist the other day, and I said, well, if it meant that we followed Queen Mary and Tasmania become part of Denmark, I would absolutely be a monarchist.
You won't like the taxes.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, but I would like the healthcare.
Yeah, I
You
know.
know,
Look, hey, you get what you
I
paid
would
for,
like the
so.
education. Yeah,
Hey, look,
but it's
we have about 6 minutes left, and there is one thing. I didn't even bother doing questions. I literally did like 3 dot points, and they're just famous people's names. Get this: Bob Villain,
yeah.
Diddy, and Kanye West, because that's what.
Oh, right. So you
Because I
want me to
don't
talk
know
about
if you
Diddy
have.
and Kanye now?
Okay,
You want
Diddy. Well. Interestingly, Diddy's less interesting. But I don't know if you saw the news that he actually just got found not guilty of his biggest charge, the racketeering
Oh,
one. So
no, I didn't see that.
Diddy is having a pretty good day. He's still on the hook for two ones that could potentially have sex trafficking across state lines. Because apparently, if you transport someone from one state to another to engage in prostitution, that's called sex. Yeah, that's a big deal. That's sex trafficking. So anyway, he's got two of those to beat. So that's interesting. So that's. But the most interesting one is that Kanye West has been denied a visa into Australia after the music world tried its really hard. It tried really hard to pretend like he didn't release a music video called
Oh
High.
yeah, the big aisle one. Yeah, I saw that. That was one of the more surreal moments that I've ever experienced.
Dude, when that video came up, I downloaded it immediately. I'm like, this is culturally significant and
Oh
we need to
yeah,
preserve this. Like,
mate, mate. It encapsulates the absurd times in which we live.
right?
Like it
Right.
just,
And the worst part is, it's a banger. That track, that I'm a feeling is a sick drop. Like, I found myself humming it around the house. I'm like,
yeah, yeah,
which is an incredible demonstration of A, how crazy fucking Kanye is, because he literally samples Hitler's dialogue. Old mate has a hip hop feature 75 odd years after he's dead. Um, so there's that, but also just how good he is. Like, he can shit a great hook. You know what I mean? Like,
mm,
Kanye is that talented that he could have you, Samora Squid, walking around going,
and he did.
and he
He did.
did. Wow. But he has been denied even a visiting visa. I believe it was a tourist visa, just to because I think his missus Bianca Censori, that the the dead faced woman who was nude at the Grammys or whatever the fuck,
Mm.
is Australian. I did not know this.
Oh, really?
So yeah, so he was trying to come down here and he got told no. So.
Has he been doing it?
Oh, he's to it. He was in the big day. He headlined the big day out one year and
Oh, he
crushed it.
did. Yeah,
What that this is
yeah,
back
yeah.
in the day. This is like
Yeah.
late
This is pre
2000.
Breakdown.
Yeah, pre fucking everything. But
Yeah.
and it's a pity. I want that old Kanye back because the dude was a musical genius. It's just so but
Someone recently said to me that Kid Rock is Kanye for white people.
that is 100% correct. Yep. And Taylor Swift is Andrew Tate for white women. That killed
Yeah.
me. Yeah.
Yeah. My favorite thing about Taylor Swift, by which I mean something that makes me want to slash my wrists, is that if you don't like her or you criticize her billionaire status, you're a misogynist. Like, it's just like, nah, I'm
No,
not a
she's a
misogynist.
good billionaire. Yeah.
Yeah, she's a good billionaire. And it's like, the fuck. Yeah. Ah.
Oh, I love it.
Anyway,
Gorgeous.
come see me at Vinnie's Dive Bar on the 10th.
Yeah, let's do it. All right, I will put up a little splash with all of your gigs. So send me some tour posts, and yes, babe, I'll get this up tomorrow. Okay. So be
Cool.
good to yourself, and it's lovely to talk to you. I gotta go pick up my kids.
No.
See you, babe.
Bye.